Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the basic meditation class at the Buddhist Society this evening. And I'd like to begin by wishing you all, us all, a very happy Diwali. Our cousins who are Hindus and Sikhs and Jains I hope, having a happy celebration this evening. And if we feel like joining in, that's pretty good too. So that's good. The other thing I want to mention right at the outset before I forget is I want to encourage you, if you're interested, in hearing a talk and watching a video by Ajahn Sumedho. And the reason, I mean, he gives these talks pretty regularly there. And the one that caught my eye and the one I thought might be of particular interest to everybody who comes along to this class is it's got the title Meditation on Breath and Beyond Breath. Meditation on Breath and Beyond Breath. And I thought, well, gosh, that's quite interesting. I listened to the talk and I thought, yeah, that's I'd like to share that with you folks. And the only thing you've got to remember, it's to a monastic audience, that's all. And you can find it if you go to the Amravati website, and you'll see a link to Ajahn Sumedho's talks and videos. And if you click on that one and scroll down patiently, you should come to it. It's a mindfulness on meditation on breath and beyond breath. I thought that was really pretty interesting. So have a look and see what you think. So this evening, usual sort of evening for this class, I'd like to give a bit of guidance in the first 20 minutes or so, share a few thoughts, sit a little bit more. And one thing I want to reflect on this evening is a really great topic that somebody suggested when I was last here a couple of weeks back. So I'm always looking for help from everybody, you know, and I really like having themes, that sort of thing. And it was suggested, I might want to say something about dependent origination. You know, what is it? What's its relevance to meditation and to everyday life? And that's a cracking topic. It's absolutely it's a great sort of theme, as it were, for one's practice. I'll explain why later on. But in that bearing that in mind, we're going to do our usual sort of thing tonight, and I'll give a few tips, a bit of guidance, and just as a little additional exercise tonight, as it were, just be particularly aware of our tendencies, sort of odd things we take for granted as we sit here tonight. You know, I hope we've all got a suitable posture, whatever that means, alert, relaxed posture. And if we haven't, please kind of wriggle into it now, because I'd particularly like us to sort of notice as we go along this evening that, you know, the impulse, the tendency we all have, you know, to fidget a bit. I mean, right now I'm sitting here and I've got my one hand on the other one, but I've already noticed my thumbs are moving around a bit. So I'm going to, you know, I just noticed that. Or, you know, if there's a bit of a bit of a scratch, a bit of an itch somewhere, you know, the impulse to scratch it. We don't have to do it, but just notice that. And of course, the big one, excuse me, I do have to have a sip. The big one in a meditation group is to clock watch. You know, how are we doing? How's the time going? And just notice that tendency to do that. And that's enough. Just notice what's going on. Because I'll let you into why I'm sort of suggesting this now. Dependent origination is all about habits. And I'll say some more later on. But just observe these unimportant, absolutely unimportant, but omnipresent habits we all have. That's all. So we're sitting here tonight, an alert, relaxed posture, which I hope supports an alert, relaxed mind. Alert, awake, so we know what's going on. We notice what's going on, even with our eyes closed. And relaxed, because that's relaxation so important, because it helps us actually let go of what's going on in the mind. We notice what's going on in the mind, but we try not to cling to it. And the way to try not to cling to it is to relax, let go. So to me, the two buzzwords associated with mindfulness are just noticing and letting go, noticing and not attaching. That's a real skill in both, but particularly the letting go. And all I'm suggesting is an alert posture, but also an easy, comfortable, relaxed posture. Very helpful. So please just check out the body. This is spiritual practice. Very physical, though, isn't it? As well. Check out the body, any tension there. And I'm not saying there should or there shouldn't be, but I'm just saying, well, that's interesting. A bit tense in the shoulders. And you notice once you observe, once we're aware of something like a bit of tension, as we observe it, we could perhaps relax. And I have no problem really with people who appreciate the period of meditation and they can just relax and unwind a bit. To the extent that they sort of nod off to sleep, obviously. Ease off a bit. And the easing off a bit is a way of letting go of all these bits and pieces so we can, in fact, use the mind in a more, focused, knowing, noticing way. If we've got a lot of tension in the body, it's very difficult to let go of that, actually, isn't it? And notice anything else, actually. It sort of dominates what we notice. So it's great if we can just take it easy for a bit. View meditation as being a bit more of a holiday, actually. Alert, relaxed posture. How's the body feeling? I just scan the body quite quickly, noticing pressure points, the feeling of sitting, feet touching something or other, hands touching something or other, breath in the belly, shoulders, warmth of the room. I hope it's comfortably warm where you are, on the skin of the face, saliva in the mouth, eyelids touching, eyelids closed or half closed. I prefer closed, but up to you. Breath on the nostrils, sensations in the scalp, anything on the top of the head. And notice those sensations. That is really interesting. It's like, what's it like to hear when there's no sound? What's it like to feel a sensation when there's no sensation? Notice what's going on in the body. We're experiencing the body in this very elemental way. Movement, pressure, heat. Movement because we're all breathing. That's my body tonight, just a mass of sensation. Mostly neutral, tell you the truth. Nothing special. How's the mind? How's the mood? Upbeat, downbeat, bit scatty, relaxed and focused, at peace with the world, or furious with the person you've just had a row with. It doesn't matter. We can be mindful with all of that. This is all grist for the mill. Work with that. All of it's real enough in the sense that anything is real that comes into consciousness. But just know it. If you know the shoulders are a bit tight, we could relax the shoulders. If you know that the mind is a bit obsessive, a bit locked onto something, well, maybe we could just let go of it, perhaps. Could we give that a try? And then pick up a meditation object. And there are many. The breath is a good one. I know of no downside of using the breath as a little anchor for our practice. Calming, peaceful, non-stimulating, difficult. Because it's not stimulating, it's not exciting. You just tune into the feeling of the ordinary breath. You don't need to control it or regulate it. Or you can use a mantra. Om, may I be well, may others be well. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They're just other ways of, there's additional anchors, aren't they? When the mind bobs off, and it will do, the mind has a mind of its own, it toddles off someplace. And the practice is to observe that, not non-judgmentally. There we go again. Let go, point it back to the meditation object, the sound of silence. What happens when we're listening, but there's no sound? The answer is the sound of silence. It's a nice meditation object. So the body's like this, the mind is the way we brought it here tonight, and there's a meditation object, if we want to use one. So we sit, let the attention rest on, for example, the feeling of breathing. Wherever you want, around the nostrils maybe, that's me. You may be using the belly or anywhere else. Just check in, feel the feeling of breathing. Settling back. We're on a holiday. And just tune in to the rhythm of the ordinary breath. It's always changing. Comes in, goes out. Comes in, out breath. If you want to count along with it, that gives a bit more of an anchor. Please do so. That helps. Count up to 10 on the breath. Lose count, start at the beginning. If you want to do that, do it. If the mind's scatty, I find that quite helpful. No need to do it if we don't need to. The feeling of the breath, sometimes long, sometimes short, deep, shallow. We don't have to control it. The body knows how to breathe. And the breath can be quite delightful. If you want to know what peace of mind is all about, and who doesn't want to know that, pay attention to the rhythm of the breath. But because the breath is not at all stimulating, I mean, unless we've got some problem with breathing, but if it's just ordinary, it's not stimulating. And so the mind, the attention will wander. And that's what attention does do. It wanders. But the remarkable thing about the mind is that we can pay attention to the attention. We can be aware of what the attention is doing. Oh, thinking. Oh, fantasizing. Oh, having a worry, making a plan, replaying yesterday. Notice that. No judgment. It's like my favorite phrases. Here we go again. Let go. Deliberately point the attention back to the breath. That's the only bit of deliberation. That's the only thing that requires effort. The effort to let go of something, to relax around something. The effort to point the attention back to the breath. And it's not a question of grasping the breath at all. Trying to keep the attention on the breath, I think, could give us a headache. Sustaining the attention on the breath is learning to let go of everything else. So the attention reverts automatically to the next in-breath, the next out-breath. And just be alert to these little impulses to twitch, to move. That's not a question of fighting or suppressing. It's just notice it. You don't have to worry about clock watching. That's my job. Enjoy the in-breath, the out-breath. And just notice that an in-breath has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and all points in between. And then maybe there's a slight pause. And the out-breath begins and ends. Pause. We just tune into that rhythm. So I thought I'd, well, by popular request, I thought I'd say something about dependent origination, and in particular, how it sort of figures in meditation practice and in everyday life. And that's really a great topic. I'm very grateful to whoever it was, somebody who suggested this, because yeah, it's kind of core stuff in Buddhism. First noble truth, suffering. Second noble truth, the cause of suffering. And dependent origination is all about explains why we suffer. It's an explanation of dukkha, and in very simple terms. And I'm going to try and I'm not for one moment going to read it out to you or anything like that. This is not the time or the place really to do this, but it explains suffering in terms of the way we are trapped by our habits. Let's put it like that, where we are trapped by our habits. That'll do for a start. And the interesting thing about it is that this idea of being trapped by our habits, dependent origination, it fits very well indeed with cognitive behavioral therapy, and obviously mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy. And just for the record, the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, Aaron Beck, died just the other day. We have a lot to thank him for. And in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, the problem is one of being on automatic pilot, automatic patterns of thinking. He talked about auto thinking, automatic thinking, automatic moods and emotions, automatic patterns of behavior. And in cognitive behavioral therapy, the sort of model is one of thoughts triggering off moods and emotions, which trigger off further thoughts, and you go round and round, digging an even deeper hole. Just go round and round and round in what could be a very negative, depressive, anxious kind of circle. And the therapist, as I understand it in cognitive behavioral therapy, challenges this pattern of thinking. Oh, really? Really? You really are a scumbag, are you? You really are hopeless. Is that always true? Does the boss always pick on you particularly? And so that's my understanding of the way cognitive behavioral therapy works. What's that got to do with Buddhism? And I've just said CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is like, going around in a circle, a vicious circle. And then what comes to my mind is the wheel in Tibetan Buddhism, that wonderful teaching device in Tibetan Buddhism. And that wheel is dependent origination. And there's a lot more teaching besides in that. And independent origination, these deep, often subconscious patterns of thinking, of behaving, of responding, of emoting, are conditioned by what we Buddhists call ignorance. And that's not intellectual ignorance. It's ignorance in the sense of making a self out of attaching to our likes and dislikes. So that's who we are. That's how we get a selfie view of the world, as it were, by attaching to our view of our likes and dislikes, and we see the world in a particular way as a result. And I'm not a computer expert, but it seems to me just like getting a virus in your operating system of your computer, something like that. So that'll do for tonight's explanation of what dependent origination is all about. Now the question is, what's it got to do with meditation practice? In meditation practice, we are one, mindful. Well, that's the name of the game, isn't it? Where we notice. One of the characteristics of mindfulness is the ability to notice, not to suppress, not to judge. What are we noticing? Well, we notice these tendencies, these impulses, right? We notice this for the mind to wander. Where do they wander to? The past. Oh, there we go again. It's this friendly attitude. We notice in a friendly way what the automatic process of the mind is. It's set up in a particular, it's conditioned. Dependent origination is all about this conditions, that condition, something else. Oh, yes. So we notice that. Oh, that's what it's all about. There we go again. And the practice is to notice. There we go again. Go back to the breath. And that's why I suggested we notice simple things like, the tendency to have a look at the clock, the tendency to have a scratch. We just note, or more importantly, just to notice the tendency to dwell on the past, this sort of thing. Just notice these tendencies for the mind to wander, and then to let go, to go back to the breath. So the two characteristics of mindfulness I like to emphasize, right, the noticing and the letting go. And then as the mind calms down a bit, we can notice the very impulse, the intention to do these things. So I notice, for example, I've just moved my hand towards a stick here to bang me, and so I notice that. But then at a sort of, when the mind calms down a bit, I notice the tendency to do it before I pick up the stick. There's an impulse. It doesn't happen automatically. There's an intention to do it. And I notice that. And I can do it or not do it. Getting a bit of freedom from these habits. We're breaking the habits, not by sort of suppressing them, but by noticing them and letting go of them. And gradually this reduces the power of these quite deep-seated tendencies. It reduces their power over us. We get a bit more, let's call it freedom. And what about dependent origination in daily life, in ordinary everyday life? There are endless opportunities to be aware of these habitual tendencies. So it's like the first thing to do is to enhance this noticing and letting go, is if possible to slow down a little bit in what we do. Slow down a little bit. I mean, not when we're crossing the road and the bus is coming, but hurry up, please. But it's like, slow down a bit so that I'm just thinking of my own, I'm bearing my soul, my not soul, right? It's like, before we respond to a WhatsApp ping, just, okay, notice that. Before we go from one link to another link, notice that. Notice that tug, that pull, that impetus. Before I sit down, and there's that impulse to switch on the television. There's no right or wrong about this. I'm just learning how about my operating system. And when we listen to or watch the news, just be aware of our reaction to it. I know people who, listen to the news and they're interrupting, sort of, they're throwing things at the screen already. Just notice the reaction to things. Notice how we react to other people we know, people we don't know. We react in a particular way. Just be aware of that, please. But we notice how, like our attention is grabbed by an ad or by what's in a shop window. We just notice that. There's no judgment about right or wrong. What we're doing is just, noticing our autopilot. When we notice it, maybe we don't have to act on it. I'm not saying all habits are unskillful or bad habits, but some habits, do we really want to be driven in this way or not? Notice, first of all, the first thing is to notice. And then maybe when we've noticed, we can step back a bit. And then I do suggest exercises, if you like, homework. And I think I've suggested this before, absolutely harmless sort of things. Which shoe do we put on first? We put a shoes on, left shoe or right shoe? Just notice that. Have a bit of fun. If you put on the left one first, put on the right one first. Just notice these habits. When you're taking a step, simple step, to begin with the left foot or the right foot. We sit down at the table, we sit in a particular place. Try sitting in another place. I mean, just notice these habits. And I want to give you, I want to end up with what I've been doing recently. I'm left-footed, left-legged, or whatever you want to call it. I always start off with my left foot while I'm going for a walk. I can't do that for a bit. I've got a knee problem. I've had to slow down. Just out of my reach now is a stick. And it's very interesting to observe these habitual tendencies and how if I act on them, they cause a very distinct sort of dukkha. And so I don't. So in a sense, I'm kind of relearning how to let go of a habit and walk in a slightly different way. How interesting that is. How interesting that is. How frustrating at one level. I'm not getting from my study to the kitchen quite so quickly. Sure, I'm not. But it's very interesting to see a habit, to learn to let go of it, and maybe build a more skillful habit. Let's do a little more meditation. And once again, notice habitual tendencies as we sit here, apparently doing nothing. And I should say, we're going to have some questions and discussion in a while. And somebody's already tuned into the fact that you can do chat. You can send a chat message through. And I'll try and pick it up, or Wongdu, who's pulling the strings behind the IT strings here tonight. Thank you to him. We'll make sure I get it. But when we do get to questions and answers, we can unmute and speak, as it were, and then or we can send a chat through. Anyway, that's for a few minutes' time. Let's go back to sitting. How's the body feel? Setting the body up. How's the mind? It's like this. There's this crucial little phrase of mindfulness, which I guess I picked up from Ajahn Sumedho. Mindfulness, it's like this. It's just the way it is right now. So how are things right now? That's mindfulness. Noticing, but letting go. And using a meditation object, the breath, the mala beads, the mantra, sound of silence, to help us, so that we're not, we've got a little home to return to, a little anchor. And we're not suppressing thoughts, we're observing them. We're not suppressing emotion. Well, that's what it's like. But we're learning to let go of that by directing the attention quite deliberately back to the sensation of next in-breath and next out-breath. And when the mind wanders, as it will most likely wander, just be aware of that. There we go again. There's no need to analyze it or explain it. Just notice that, or notice the tendency to want to explain it or analyze it. That's another habit. Right? For whatever reason, there was an impetus to think something, to remember something. You notice that. Oh, there we go again. And then the real effort is let go. Point the attention back to the next in-breath or the next out-breath. everybody can unmute, I hope, if Wongdu lets us. um, before we actually get on to questions and discussion, I want to say a little bit uh, about I went to the Theravada meditation class on Monday, and I'm sure there were several other people here who did it too. And I went because I hadn't seen Sister Sundara, Ajahn Sundara from Amravati, for quite a long time. And I'd heard she'd been very ill and a lot of heart trouble. And I was really, quite concerned to see how she's doing. And I was absolutely delighted that she was as kind of chipper as ever. Oh, it was just great. But one thing I noticed was when it came to question time at the end, all the questions were kind of unhappy questions. It was like there were questions about anger and fear and anxiety. And it's like, it's really, it's like, oh my goodness. And but by the way, first of all, there's a lot of things out there which make fear and anxiety and worry and anger not, not surprising. That's what life is like at the moment, isn't it? And the other point to notice is that, dukkha is the motivation of our practice. The reason that the Siddhartha Gautama, left the palace behind and rediscovered the Dharma, rediscovered Buddhism, was because he was shocked by discovering old age, sickness, and death. It's like, and a lot of us, me included, that's why we got into Buddhism. I mean, my teens, somebody who was very close to me died, and so I'm an impressionable teenager, and, it's like, that's mortality. And I happen to be reading, bits and pieces on this thing called Buddhism, dukkha, causes of it. But then you see, this is the good, the optimistic bit. Then Buddhism is all about, once you know the causes of suffering, then you can do something about it. It can cease. And then the Eightfold Path is, well, this is how you do it. And I think it's important, for us to emphasize, it's like the positive aspects of Buddhism. We might come into it because of life's unsatisfactoriness, the things that cause us grief and fear and agitation and anger and all the rest of it. But if you do it for a bit, and Buddhism is something you do, you have to believe it. If we do it for a bit, actually, in a lot of our experience, it works. It does really, really, really help. And so I just want to emphasize that, so people ask questions about anger and anxiety and all of that. And I mean, one reply is, which I guess I've already sort of given, it's like, well, these are conditions which come into the mind, and as mindful meditators, you just notice them and let go of them. It's like the analogy is, these are clouds passing through the sky. Yeah, and the sky is, the empty sky is really nice, but these darn black clouds get in the way. And it's like, you sit there and notice. It's not as simple as that, is it? I mean, sometimes mindfulness needs a bit of help. And needless to say, the Buddhist teachings provide a bit of help in the form of further meditation on loving kindness and compassion. It's terribly important. It's like, particularly if we're critical or if we are very unhappy campers, right? Mindfulness on its own may not, mindfulness is terribly, terribly powerful. Wow, to ability to look at these emotions and fears and whatnot and redirect the attention back to the breath, and gradually the clouds clear And there's just the expansive emptiness of consciousness, of the mind itself, you know? Wow. Darn difficult to do, isn't it, sometimes? So the encouragement, certainly from me, I've got a lot of benefit from doing this, is the practice of mindfulness. Some people say that, you know, it's like loving kindness or whatever is the fruit of practicing something else. It is a practice. It's quite clearly a meditation practice. And, you know, it's like here we are at this time of the evening. I just want to sort of, I'm not going to, I just hint at how to do it. You know, you look at the books, you think about, well, I'm going to be spreading thoughts of loving kindness to all sentient beings throughout the universe. Yeah. Okay. You start with the person sitting right there with me, with you. And you begin by bringing thoughts of loving kindness and well-being to ourselves. We wish ourselves, wait for it, this sounds almost un-Buddhist. We wish ourselves good things. Okay? We wish ourselves good things. And uh, and the way to do that, because often, you know, we go to CBT therapists, you know, because we have for example, a very negative opinion of ourselves, you know, and they'll challenge that. And I think in metta practice, loving kindness practice, we're sort of challenging it in a much in a more subtle way. So when I'm encouraging metta practice, and when I can encourage it, when I do it myself, the first thing I do is to bring to mind my own good qualities. Everybody here this evening, you know, whatever you know, whatever a downside, you know, look, everybody here, we're all complicated characters, but part of those complicated characters is a lot of goodness. So deliberately, we begin a practice of mindfulness, or I begin a practice of mindfulness, of loving kindness practice, by bringing to mind the good things about, you know, yours truly. So it's like making out a CV with just the positive stuff on the CV. I can always say, but, but, I don't do that. You know, that's another habit. There's another habit. Don't do that. Just focus on our positive qualities. We're good people. We do good things. So why do people like us? You know, we probably think nobody likes us, but I bet you some people quite like us. What are our useful skills? You know, have we done any good deeds recently? Have we even thought of doing any good deeds? You know, bring that good stuff to mind because we are good people. And good people deserve good things. So we can sit and we can wish ourselves quite authentically, quite genuinely, a heartfelt wish. May I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from all fear and anxiety, may I be free from suffering. Just wish it for ourselves. It's honest. You know, it's honest. And then we might begin to share it with other people. So a meditation practice linked to the breath, a metta bhavana, a loving kindness practice linked to the breath would be breathing in, may I be well, may I be happy. We all have to form our own words. Words that actually mean something, you know, it means stuff. May I be well. I like that because it covers, you know, mental and physical well-being. May I be well on the in-breath, and breathing out, may others be well. Then we can bring to mind all the people, you know, we care about. You know, so it's a question of turning our world around from being you know, a place where we're useless and hopeless and the whole world is against us and all that, and we can't cope, to where we're, you know, bringing to mind our own positive qualities. Yeah, I'm not all bad. You know, I deserve good things. May I be well, may I be happy. And I really encourage that as an antidote to a lot of anger. I mean, it is the classical cure for any kind of negativity in Buddhism. You know, if you want to go and, you know, there's a lot of negativity and anger, cultivate loving kindness. But you begin with yourself. You know, why are you angry? Often because we feel on the defensive. Oh, you know, it's like, you know, there's a chink in our armor. and he or she's put the knife through it, Okay, so think of all the good stuff about us. Yeah, we don't need to get angry now. It's that sort of attitude. So please, try that. Please try that. I mean, I can't overemphasize the importance of just as using that as our meditation practice. I went for about a year, actually. That was my main meditation practice. May I be well. And then you gradually expand the scope of this from the people you love and care for and like, on and on and on outwards. But always, it has to be heartfelt, and you've got to put it in the heart, and you can share it with others. Okay, look, that's enough from me. But I should say that I'm going to continue this theme of contemplating, whatever you want to call it, around dependent origination, in the future. I think it's a great topic, actually, around which to base one's meditation. But now the floor is open to everybody. You can ask a question or send a chat through, and already somebody has sent me a message. Right, let me just read this out, because I've been meditating up to now. I haven't been reading chat messages. Right, I'm quite new to meditation. I suffer with vertigo and anxiety. I find when I'm meditating, I feel very dizzy and disoriented. I understand this is because I'm slowing my heart rate, but just wondered if this lessens as I get used to meditation. I also get a really heavy feeling in my head and neck. Is this normal? Sorry for all these questions. I enjoyed the session, though, and I do find meditation very relaxing. And hope I find it easy to do the more I do of it. Well, that's pretty good. That's interesting. I'm quite new to meditation. And well, anxiety, I've said a little bit about that. Vertigo is now that's quite interesting. To me, actually, vertigo is like it's like getting up and feeling a bit wobbly. I mean, there again, we've all had experience of that sort of thing, I guess. It's that kind of sense of imbalance and maybe even nausea, right? So that's something else. All I would say is when we get into meditation for the first time, and our friend here, says I'm new to meditation, quite new to meditation, we notice all sorts of weird and wonderful things that are there in the background, which we just haven't noticed. Also, I mean, I vaguely remember, I got into meditation in my teens, I guess, and you'd sit there and also you'd feel all sorts of strange things. Itchy sensations, changing in the shape of the body, and it's very easy to think that, wow, what an amazing experience. In fact, it's just I'm noticing something that I hadn't noticed before. It's there all the time. I mean, just think about it. When you settle down a bit, there are all sorts of sensations going on in my body right now. I just don't notice them. And you can be sitting meditation and move very slightly, and you could get quite dizzy doing that. So initially, what I'm hearing is I'm meditating, I'm quietening down, and I'm noticing things I wasn't aware of before. The vertigo thing is something else, actually. But I mean, there are, medical reasons for vertigo. And then I'm slowing my heart rate. There's no problem about that. But wondering if all of this lessons you get used to meditation. But the first thing is you're slowing your heart rate. Well, yeah, but that's not what you're trying to do. It just sort of happens. I mean, if I'm sitting here right now in my safe little study, and if the door burst open and a large bear walked in, my heart rate would go up. I promise you, it really, really would. But what I'm trying to say is, it's fascinating when you're sitting meditation, and then you think something, you think a scary thing, or a bit of an angry thought about something. You just notice this interaction between body and mind. So yeah, I mean, you're just sitting here and everything's sweet, it's going nice, and your heart rate calms down. That's pretty good. The question about the sort of slightly weird, feelings of this, that, and the other, Uh, will it sort of ease, lessen as you get used to meditation? Yeah, sure, of course it will. It gradually will do. You get a heavy feeling in back and neck. Is this normal? I'm not quite sure what normal is in meditation. We're all a bit different. The important thing is to check your posture. Heavy feeling in the, it's like maybe do a few exercises to sort of ease your shoulders and neck. Try that. Try changing your posture a little bit and see if that makes any difference. Sorry for all the questions. You do not appoint. What? Gosh, that's what we're here for. Thank you. My response is thank you for the questions and keep up the good work. Okay. Then somebody else has sent me another one. I started meditating twice a day for 15 minutes at a time. My initial reaction is brilliant. Okay. I've done for 6 months now. I'm finding it easy to deal with anger and sadness. The mind clears more quickly. Is it a continuous process, though? I'm getting a bit quicker at noticing, but still hard to catch the anger sometimes. Yeah, it sounds like you're a human being, actually. Can I expect to clear the mind quicker the more and longer I meditate? Or is it always the same effort to achieve this? I can only speak from my own experience, Pete. The more we do it, the easier kind of this becomes. You're talking about being a human being, right? And these, impulses just suddenly kind of, creep up. We've been doing it for a long time, right? So it's not going to stop immediately. But the whole point about, meditation is not like taking a pill. It does not have an immediate impact, but it has a I was going to say, it has a gradual effect. Nobody knows their own karma. It is quite possible to sit down this evening and you develop a state of bliss and realize full and complete liberation from suffering. Nothing is ruled out at all. But on the whole, this is like learning any other skill. It takes a while. And you've just told me you're meditating 15 minutes twice a day, 15 minutes. I think that's brilliant. You've been doing it for 6 months. Fantastic. You're finding it easier to do it. Yeah, that's absolutely great. And you're getting a bit sharper at noticing these tendencies. Good. And can you expect, if you want to call it progress, that's progress to continue. The longer we do it, yes, you can. Yes, you can. I mean, this is a path. I believe the Buddhist teachings. This is a path that leads, to full and complete liberation from suffering. Yeah, sure. Keep up the good work. Any more questions or follow-up questions from please feel free either to unmic and have a chat. I mean, have a verbal chat, or send me a chat through.
Hi, Colin.
Oh, hi, Todor.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for your guidance for tonight's session. I am also quite new to meditation, but I've started before lockdown, so I've had a fair bit of experience and I've brought my daily meditation up to 30 minutes, but I've noticed lately my attention span is getting slower. So I've picked up a couple of books actually, to help me with mindfulness, and I've just read in one of them that they're saying that when the past thought has ceased and the future thought has not risen yet, is there a gap? Yes, well prolong it. That is meditation. And I quite like that. It rings true to me. I don't know what you'd say, but I've noticed that as I'm noticing, I'm labeling, and the labeling is straining me away. And sometimes I sit for half an hour and my bell goes, and I think, wow, I must have won this 60 times, more than 90 times, I don't know, 100 times. And it seems to be the labeling of what I'm noticing seems to be that it's more of a doing rather than being. I'm struggling to formulate my question a bit here.
Okay. Well, okay. Give me I mean, maybe I've got it wrong. Listen, on this business of labeling, that can be a handy technique. So a thought comes into your mind, you notice thinking. Or you can go further. A memory comes into your mind, you can remembering. You know, an angry feeling comes into the mind, you just know anger. And putting a label on it can be quite helpful. You put the label on it, you can let go and go back to the breath or whatever your meditation object is. So that is quite a well-known technique, you know, deliberately noting what's coming into the mind without trying to explain it or anything like that. You note it, you let go of it. But maybe you don't need to. That's the point. You know, maybe you just sit there and all this stuff, you know, the sounds and thoughts and remembering and this, that, and it comes into the mind and it just goes. So if you need, it's like all these other techniques, these are all techniques. These are all skillful means. And it's not you should not. If it helps, do it. But maybe you don't need to do it. I mean, it's just like counting with the breath. I mean, a lot of people find that very, very handy, you know, counting up to 1 to 10, lose the plot, go back and begin again. And that imposes an element of discipline. But maybe you don't need to do that. It's putting one more thing into the mind. Maybe you don't need to do that. So everybody has to be their own teacher at the end of the day, you know. And I like this idea of labeling and noting. That's jolly good. But if it's making a practice more complicated, it doesn't sound such a good idea. The thing about the bell or the clock going at the end of your practice, that's really quite interesting. I think setting a sort of a timer like that is a good thing. But but here's the point. I think, you know, even if you're totally blissed out and the bell goes, it's probably a good idea to stop because it's very easy to get terribly attached, you know, to peaceful, blissful states of mind. This sounds paradoxical, but, you know, but what one's talking about here, you know, the goal is not to sort of, you know, attach to bliss. It's not to attach to anything.
That's not what I'm having issues with. I think the noticing and the labeling get very mixed up.
Yeah, don't do it.
And I start thinking,
yep.
As I'm labeling, I'm starting thinking, and that's where I get lost. So how do you notice without actually putting a label on it?
Okay, good point. No, I quite understand. Well, I was just aware of, you know, like right now, I'm aware of the sound of your voice, right? But without putting a label on it. It's as simple as that, right? So it's like I'm looking at an image on the screen and I see a label. It says Todor. I don't have to do that. You know, it's like we don't have to mess with it that way. You know, you're sitting here, there are sensations in the body. I'm just sitting here right now. And I mean, it sounds completely wacky, but the feeling of me sitting on my chair. But I don't have to label it. The sensation is there. You know, it's there. And I can move my attention around to talking to you, right? So you don't need, you know, keep it simple. That's the trick, right? And if you find, you know, your mind is just getting busier and busier, labeling things and this, that, and the other, then labeling is not for you. Just notice what's going on. You don't even have to notice thinking. Something's coming to the mind, you're aware of it, back to the breath. Don't make a drama, you know, don't tell a story about it. Don't try and explain it. Is it this emotion or that emotion? Let go of it. Keep it simple. Keep it simple, yeah?
It's difficult to keep it simple, but yeah, I'll be
absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, it's a very simple practice, but it's a very difficult practice, right? Nobody's saying it's easy. I got another one in the chat.
Thanks.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, yeah. Look, somebody has just sent through the link that I was talking about. Do you all get the chats on your screen? If you can see the chats, then somebody.
It was me, Colin. I sent the link out.
Oh, cool. Okay.
No, Odin sent it to me, so I sent it out to everyone. So
everybody can see it. Thank you so much. That's good. And I recommend that. Yeah, thank you. Are there any more questions? I mean, on anything we've done, you know, either dependent origin. I should say dependent origination. This is, gosh, I want to continue with this theme because there's so much to sort of explore, not as an intellectual exercise, but from the point of view of practice. I sort of talk about it in very general terms. Oh, well, we've got these deep-seated tendencies and habits, right, which make us see the world in a particular way and respond to it in a particular way. But when you look at dependent origination, it's like it's really going into it in quite fine detail. And in particularly in meditation practice, you can be aware of the details. How interesting this is, you see. Dependent origination is such a fundamental teaching in Buddhism, absolutely fundamental. And I mean, I've got a copy somewhere on my desk right here. If I picked it up and read it to you, it's like, what on earth is all this about? Intellectually, it's quite difficult. It really is quite difficult. But practice just makes it pretty clear, actually. You just got to, it's one of these things you do, and you learn by doing it, you see. It's very interesting, and I'm so glad that I was asked to sort of think about that. Aha. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna, my default option is to, ruminate a bit, if that's the right word, on dependent origination, and kind of like, what does this really mean from the point of view of one's meditation practice? Because, as the mind quietens down, you just notice the sort of minutiae of these things very clearly. Very clearly, and you just notice this stuff, and you can let go of it more easily. It's very interesting. And by the way, something I should have said when I was talking about cultivating loving kindness, and how we often have a very negative sense of self, and that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because, the sort of doctrinal, the sort of standard view is there's no such thing as self in Buddhism. And ultimately, that's absolutely right, you see. But everybody's got a sense of self. Everybody's got a sense of self. And that's a creation, it's not. I don't know what the essential Colin Ash actually is. I have not a clue. But I could sort of describe my characteristics, my likes and my dislikes, and age, on and on and on. But is that really me? Okay, is that really me? I don't know. And so sometimes this sense of self is very negative. You always think of being selfish as thinking one's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm absolutely wonderful and all this kind of stuff. Just as difficult is a negative sense of self. I'm no good. I can't do it. I'm rubbish. It's like, I can't handle walking into this room where all these strange people are. It's a negative sense of self. So it's yet another problem of the self, of identity and the self. Okay, I just want to put that in. So I've got a message coming through from Wongdu, which is Jeff seems to have a question. Hi.
Hi, Hi, Colin. No, I really didn't have a question. I just wanted to comment on the fellow before you about noticing and labeling. I've been doing meditation. I just started probably about 18 months, 2 years. And I ran into the same problem that I was doing, like you had mentioned, Colin. I was doing too much. I was labeling, and then I was noticing, and they were getting muddled. And I found out I couldn't concentrate. And listening to yourself and others, I went back to the breath. I didn't label. I didn't notice. When my mind started to wander, I brought myself back to the breath. And I've found in the last 4 to 5 months, that's done it for me. That's worked really well.
That's cool, you see. I mean, it's this business about these sort of analogies. There's the sky out there, right? And then there's the clouds and whatnot that come through the sky. There's the space of the room we're in, right? And then there's the laptop, the books, whatever in the room, right? And the one I love is going to the movies, right? You go to the movies, there's all the action on the screen, but there's the screen itself. Nobody notices the screen. Nobody notices the spaciousness of the room. Nobody notices the vastness of the sky, which has get hooked on the action in the movies, on the laptop in the room, on and on and on. And a lot of this practice, from a very sort of high point of view, is saying there's the contents of the mind, and then there's the mind itself. That's what really this is all about, actually. There's a lot of stuff going on in here, but we know it, we notice it. So it's sort of a switch of, that's the real McCoy. It's like,
Yeah, and I just found going back to the breath. That has seemed to do it.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Right. Exactly.
Cool. Thanks. Any other comments, messages, chat, complaints? You got a nice dog there, Jeff. Good. Yeah. Any other thoughts for the day, for the evening? Well, I think it's time all good things come to an end. And in the case of the Thursday meditation class, they begin again next Thursday when our good friend Richard Bober will be leading the class, and I'm after that. Ajahn Barry's after that. But don't forget that if you want some lunchtime meditation, the lunchtime meditation class, there's a lunchtime meditation class this is all from the Buddhist Society, on Mondays and on Fridays. And there's another meditation class session, whatever you want to call it, on Sunday mornings as well. So if you like practicing in a group like this, there are no excuses for not doing it. Okay, so thanks for coming, everybody. Do look after yourselves, take care, send yourselves lots of loving kindness, all that sort of thing. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Good.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.